did have a couple of items in the agenda, I know. I've completely forgotten the second one. No, I got it right. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for showing up to the 5th clinic. The talk of the day will be from Andrew. Oh, sorry, Alan. I beg your pardon, Alan. But there are a couple of items on the agenda I just wanted to mention in passing to people. The first is that you remember that last time we chatted, Geosphere has just added a national layer where the first item on the agenda was the outline of your allotments. And I just wanted to advise that Chris Muse has now said they will automatically pick up any subdivisions that you have within your asset register under the land. So if you've spent a lot of time and trouble in putting in the allotment subdivisions, they will automatically get picked up and put into the national layer. So I thought that was good news. And secondly, I have a question for everybody, which arose from a discussion that Andrew and I had at the last training session, which is that so far, when you send a map to public map for production on, say, your village website, it doesn't include with it the attachments that you may have with the original. However, they are going to send the attachments through, but they wanted to ask us whether you automatically wanted every attachment to go through by default, or did you want to have control over which ones went up? And I said that from Long Sutton's point of view, we'd like everything. And Andrew said for Martock's point of view, he'd like to have control. So let me throw the field open and ask the rest of you. Let's start with Greg. Could you say what Hunt and Dundon might want?
I'd say we'd want control. So there's a button at the top that says all, and then there's a lot of tick boxes down the side for each document.
That would be a good idea for us, yeah.
Okay. So is there anybody who doesn't mind about the whole lot going up, or everyone wants to have control?
I'd quite like control in Milverton, please.
Okay. Well, it seems to be a hands down winner then for control. So I can pass that back to Chris and go from there. And that's all I have. Out of courtesy to Alan, let's deal with anything else that might pop up. Does anybody have anything that needs to be added to today's agenda before we get started? Excellent, that's a no. In that case, Alan, rather than I introduce you inaccurately, why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are and why you're here today, please.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Yes, what an experience this is. I must admit it's my first, and yeah, quite looking forward to it. And thank you for inviting me. Well, where do I begin? It's about allotments. And I know you've mentioned it a few times. I suppose for me, my allotment experience started probably in about 1945, 46, when Dad came back from the war, and I would join him on the plot. And that continued through my childhood. And he basically taught me on the job, so to speak, from that early age until, and you already mentioned this, Graham, until I realized that there was such a thing as girls. And and then there was another attraction. And also at that stage, I was very keen on competitive cycle racing. So I'm afraid the allotments came a very long way down the list. In fact, I completely deserted them. And then we'd have to spin it forward until I came to be about 22, done all my training and everything. And I married quite young at 22. And I thought then I would quite like a plot and come back to it. And indeed, the site that I'm on now is the same site. So that was in 1965, and I went on that site, and I've been there ever since. And I think that's, I don't know, you do the maths, as Mr. Datchett says, but it's about 55, 56 years, is it? Something like that. So I've seen that number of seasons on my site here in Taunton and enjoyed every one and still enjoy them. And throughout my career, I mainly worked with a company. We built the company more or less from scratch back. I joined them in 1970, 71, and stayed with them until 2001, 2002, when I retired. And by then we'd built the company and sold it to the parent company of EDF. And I then concentrated on my allotments, which is what I'd always wanted to do. So I've had 18 years on the allotments. And in that time, I was asked probably about 15, 16 years ago to consider joining the National Allotment Society. We had been members of that society since the 80s. So I played an active part in the management on our site. We are a self-managed site with about 200 plots. So I had some sort of idea what was involved. And yes, I volunteered to join them. I was a bit despondent in the first 3 or 4 months, because at that time, 2002, 3, we were still closing an awful lot of sites in the UK. They were being closed and they were being built on. You take an area like Bristol, they had actually closed in a 30-year period around about that time. They had closed more acreage of statutory allotment site than the rest of England put together. That was just in the city of Bristol. An amazing fact, but I answered that when the press queried it. My answer to that really was, well, they must have had a lot in the first place. But that was the situation. We were in dire straits then. And then suddenly it started to pick up. And I could see that on my site. And at that stage, I was asked to join about 15, 16 years ago. I was asked to join the main board, and I became their regional director for the southwest of England. That gave me the opportunity to work with new groups and develop a model for installing brand new allotment sites. I had the first call, and I've already mentioned this site by chance. That was at Williton. I had the call from them. And I rang head office and said, can you give me some indication on how we do this? How do we create a new allotment site? And there was a deadly silence. It was nothing. Because the truth was that they hadn't actually created any for a 30-year period. They were all in decline and they were just being built on. So I approached it from what I've been used to doing in business, from the ground up, and literally built a model, got the community involved, created an association down there, and we then we created a new allotment site. And it's still working all these years later. And that was the first, and I am currently working on number 65 or 66. I'm not quite sure. The one I'm working on at the moment is with Wellington Town Council. They're putting a brand new site in as part of a development. It's been handed over from the developers, and we'll install a new eco-friendly site there for the town council. They will manage that one. So along the way, with these 60+ sites, it's the ideas have come in, the developments, and we've tried to utilize as much of the land as possible. Nowadays, tenants normally, if they have a choice, they normally would choose a smaller size plot. They very rarely go for the standard size, which, as you probably know, is 250 square meters, the old size being 300 square yards. That is generally far too big for most people coming into allotment theory. They would choose 125. So we tend to develop them with that size, and you get more people on site. And the people that get really keen, they often end up having two. And that generally works out. At the moment, it's not the case, because there is fantastic demand because of what's happening to us in the last 6 months. So we're back really to going straight into 125 square meters and multiples of that. You can always cut that down into half as well, and it becomes viable. With regard to running the sites, and most parishes tend to do their own, often in conjunction with associations on site. Others, such as the ones that I've created, by and large, most of those have been created on private land in conjunction with a local landowner. And one of the advantages with that, it can be mutually beneficial for that landowner because it's probably a much better cash flow for them. It's usually an odd piece of land, and as just ordinary land, it doesn't attract that much rental, not in terms of annual turnover. Whereas an allotment, if it's managed well, and it can be a source of income, and it's a good thing for the community. And I've been fortunate enough to persuade enough landowners to lease them. You do need quite tight, in that circumstance with private land, you do need quite a tight tenancy agreement to ensure that that land, the integrity of that land is maintained. And you know, people understand that, you know, it's only an annual rental. It's all allotment sites in the UK, it's just 1 year. They roll over, and providing the rules are adhered to and everybody's okay, they carry on, like in my case, for 56 years. But I often say to people, no, I haven't had a 50-year plus lease. I've had 51-year leases. And if I don't get it right this year, I won't have the next one. So that's the way the Allotments Act is written, and that's the way allotments are generally leased in this country. So you've got these three sort of categories. You've got the private, strictly private site. Then you've got a temporary arrangement, which is a temporary, like it's like a statutory site, but it's temporary. Typically, that would be somewhere like at the end of a cemetery, where it's going to be used for burials in the future, but hey, you've probably got 30 years of allotments in the interim. And that's a temporary site. And then you've got a full-blown statutory site, which generally speaking is a site which was created for that purpose by the parish council, town council at the time. So it was acquired. It can be land that's bequeathed to the council. They could have bought it. They could be on a long-term lease. But whatever it is, it would automatically become statutory if the parish or the district council had decided that that land was acquired for that purpose. And of course, as such, it's fairly secure in law, because the 1908, 1950 Allotments Act are still there, and they're still fit for purpose. They still work. They're old, but they're better than nothing. So that's what we found ourselves doing, creating these sites. And we would look to, if possible, to self-manage. All the ones that I'm referring to are all, first of all, they were all created at zero cost to the community itself. We've done them all with grant funding, even on private land. It's quite amazing how the funders will come along and help out. Not usually a lot at a time, but they will help out if it's an association formed from within that community and properly constituted. And this is really where the National Allotment Society come in. They will advise the members. The membership itself is, for an individual on an allotment site, is about £3 per annum each. And for that association would get all the services, both legal and surrounding local services, to help them set up their site. And that's what I found myself doing basically for the last 15 or 16 years. And sometimes it's very busy. Recently, it's obviously been very quiet, but I enjoy meeting communities, getting them on board, and just generally helping them to create an association with a view to creating the allotment site for themselves, by themselves. And in many cases, within that structure of the lease, the lease paramount with the landowner, oftentimes the parish comes into that. So they have a lease with the landowner, and then in turn, they lease it on a year or maybe 5-year rolling lease to the association. And the association then take on everything that's required within that site. And that might be maintaining boundary hedges, pathways, whatever's needed, all they do is they pay the set amount for that and on a rental basis, an annual and they take on everything. They do all the insurances, they do the lettings, the whole lot. And indeed, the 9 or so sites that are in and around Taunton, they are all on that basis. The town council here in Taunton, district council, have nothing to do with allotments apart from raising one invoice a year electronically, and all the tenants on all the sites run them under their individual associations. And that keeps the rent down, takes the worry from the council. And of course, it works better. It seems to work better with larger councils. Parishes don't tend to have those problems. They tend to be able to deal with them in-house, so to speak. And we the National do try and help that. We run quite a few courses for parish clerks. I've been out to Somerton on several occasions helping deliver a day-long course for parish clerks, which is part of the service that we do. So that's what I've found myself doing. And I'm gonna lead on a bit now, because I would think that is probably attracted a few questions already. And I don't know what you think, Graham. Would you like me to deal with those now, or do you want to go on later? Because I've got something I want to say about land and things like that.
I think take a 3-minute pause for questions and then move on.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah. Under the call that the creation of allotments or maintenance. And then if there's anyone's got any questions on what I've raised so far, be delighted to try and help.
I don't see anybody unmuting themselves, so it looks like you've been far too persuasive so far.
Oh dear.
Hello, Greg is raising a hand, but you're muting.
Good.
I'm trying to unmute myself, Graham. It's all right. I can't raise my hand and use the mouse. It's a bit.
Hello, Andrew. Yeah.
Hi, Alan. I have a question. We are in my parish council at Compton Dundon. We have half-acre allotments, which are let out as sort of farm type, small holding type allotments, but we want to convert some of those into small plots for domestic allotments. So therefore, under your creation part, that's what we're talking about at this moment in time. So I suppose my question is how easy it is to unpick that. In other words, to say to somebody, I'm sorry, your allotment is no longer a half-acre allotment and we're going to divvy it up into small plots.
It is difficult because it's dealing with people. All I would say is, when I originally took this model and this idea to the National Trust, obviously we had that problem there because they own a lot of land around their building. If I take, for example, Lights Kerry, which you probably all know, I was asked to go up there and advise them on that one. And that was fairly straightforward because that land was just part of a field that was let to a farmer. And it was just a question of we managed to get the lease changed within about a year, normal sort of Michaelmas Lady Day notice. And you can do that. It's quite permissible to do that. And I don't think there was a case. I worked on a lot of, when I took the original idea to them, they were a bit quiet for a while. But after 6 months, they sort of suddenly lit up and was all over the country, and I was privileged to work on about 6 or 8 in the West Country, and without exception they acquired the land back, but just by just talking to the farmers and said, can we have that 2 acres or 3 acres, and it was as simple as that, really. Very much similar to yourself, I would have thought. If it's more persuasion than commandeering it, but I think you have got a duty, as you probably know, to provide those, and you're in an ideal position, Andrew. What you're saying, and I did have a look at the tail end of your last month's meeting, and I was immediately, blocks of red like that, I was seeing that redrawn. I could see a couple of those, and we could create, if we could take 4 of those and take an acre, for instance, would probably create you 25 very nice plots there, which would probably service your area your parish quite well. I am very fortunate because during my progress with developing some sites 10 years ago, I helped the community of Western Zoyland out on the moors, and I became very friendly with. He was practicing then as an architect, and he was the leading light in developing the association, and he quite likes drawing allotment sites. So ever since then, and he does it free of charge, and he will come along with me or even do it from Google, and he would design us a very nice modern allotment site, and that takes into consideration, you know, building rain harvesting, composting, looking after the soil, and the sheer designs out some of the risky parts of the old sites. So it's very much in a modern way, and he's just done one for me over at Wellington now, and it's nice. It's just something to work with, something for the community. But once you could persuade for someone to get a block there, and you let us know more or less what you want, we can do that completely free of charge for you. Excellent. And yeah, no problem at all.
Oh, that sounds really good.
That's just what we do, you know. So and we both enjoy doing it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And hey, one thing before you go, Andrew, you've got one of the best sources of organic manure within your village.
Yeah, I'm a good friend with Jim. It's fine.
Are you? I need to talk to you. I've been desperately. Jim and I have been acquaintance friends for 36 years. This is the first year we've not met up.
I was going to say,
I can't get it.
Yeah, Jim and I play. Yeah, we play Skittles together, so I would be seeing him every week. But of course, that's all on hold at the moment.
Well, we need to talk because I've been desperately trying to ring him for through just to pass the time, because it's been so long. Just mention my name to him when you're speaking. I will, Alan. Because I need to link up. That's great. Thank you. Right. Any other questions?
Oh, press on then, please, Alan.
Wonderful.
If you would.
Wonderful.
Excuse me, I'd like to ask a question. It's Anita Dukowski here.
From Milverton.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how we get hold of you, basically, to ask you to help us out. We have got, I think the site's been in effect since about 1920, and it's it's quite ingrained in some areas with sort of older parishioners.
Yeah, people with chickens.
You hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, I know. I've heard the word.
Now, our council were re-elected. I think it was it last May, I think, and three of us, Phil, I and Molly, have been trying to kind of bring it sort of a bit more up to date in doing exactly what you said. I mean, we visited Plain Ponds in Wivilliscombe, yep, and Dunster to see how they've been run. And we were also at one of your talks over at Somerton and met the lady from Wellington who invited us to go and have a look at her allotments. I can't remember her name now, but of course, then all this kicked in because we, it was late in the year when we were at your talk. And we said, oh, we'll do it in about April or May. And then, of course, we didn't do it in April or May.
No.
Anyway, it would be interesting, I think, if we could have some advice from you, because we've got these we've got, I hate to say it, but a couple of them have got something like 40 rods each, and it's and they're family plots and they think they own and all this sort of stuff. So we're having to be very gentle in the way we kind of move it along, put it that way. And we've taken the line that until we have a waiting list, we won't approach them. Because they are sort of at an age now that they're almost giving up anyway. So we, rather than create huge waves and ructions and things, that's the approach we're using. But we do have problems because the main problem being one of no water up there. And I've looked into a grant from Wessex Water to put some sort of rainwater harvesting thing up there. But for various reasons that didn't happen. But we've rejigged all sorts of things, so it makes it easier for us to do what we want. We've been able to talk the parish council into sort of releasing us a bit more freedom into allowing us to break up the large allotments into smaller ones. But it would be, we had an idea of sort of commandeering one as a parish allotment so that we could put on a water harvesting thing, whatever it is. But the other thing that came, once some of these allotments were being released this year, we got one rather nice site that somebody suggested would be nice as a community allotment. I'm not convinced that will work in a small community like Milverton. I can see it working in a town, but I can't understand how we would get the interest from a tiny community where we don't even have a waiting list. So I think what we need is maybe some advice from you.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of questions there.
Yeah, there are.
And I think we could deal with some of them now, but
right.
some big issues as well. Yeah. And I am familiar with a lot of those problems already. Yeah. And there are a few solutions, but first and foremost, I'll say one thing about communities. You're absolutely right. They are really fit for purpose in an urban situation, right, and a city situation at that. They rarely work as a community outside, and it can cause problems. It depends on who manages. Someone has to accept responsibility for it, yeah, and that's where the difficulty comes. So unless you have to, I think you look at it another way and say perhaps we could split a plot and have smaller plots. If yeah, people are worried about not being able to, and you can have joint plots with sharing, official sharing. And there are ways and means to do that. So there are other ways to do that. Your rain harvesting, I can probably help you on that one. And I think it's a good idea what you're possibly pursuing, because it would prove the case almost, and set sort of some idea of a model and a precedence of how to do it. And I may well be able to get you a supply of those IBC big containers. They're the heart of a rain harvesting scheme now, because they are readily available. So I'm sure we can get you some of those. Right. So yeah, there's lots of things. And with regard to my contact, it's just Alan Cavill allotments on Professor Google, and it frightens me where I've been and what I've done. So you can get all my details from there.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Any other questions?
I should press on, Alan.
Yeah, okay, we'll press on. Right, I just wanted to talk a bit about, so I just, before we go into this, an interesting thing's happening at the moment. It's been around for a couple of years, but there's a film on Netflix, and I realize not everyone subscribes to Netflix, but has anyone seen or heard of a film called Kiss the Ground? I know it causes a little titter, but it's Kiss the Ground. Anyone seen or heard of it at all?
No, I haven't. No.
I would strongly advise, if you're at all interested in the planet, growing or anything, that you try and get. I struggled with trying to get a view of it, and then I suddenly realized that one of my grandchildren subscribed, so he very kindly let me have his pass number, and you can I get it on this tablet, no problem at all. And I can only use it, of course, when he's at work. So, but it's a very good film, and it really is what I do a lot of talking about, which is the no-dig method of cultivation. Have any of you tried the no-dig, or is it something that interests you at all? Does anyone have any idea? Anyone ever heard of a Somerset man called Charles Dowling?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Everybody knows Charles. Well done. Yeah, Charles and I have been friends for a long time.
Sorry, what was that surname? Charles
Dowdy.
Dowdy.
Yeah, he's well on the internet. If you just look him up, lots and lots of lovely videos on YouTube. Great guy. And he is a Somerset man. Charles, for I think I'm right, it changes nearly 40 years, has been promoting the idea of no dig cultivation. Very successful. I would say he's now got himself into position being a world authority. In fact, he seems to supply. We were just talking to him the weekend, and he sent so many thousand books across to America. His latest book. So yeah, we've been friends now for 20 some odd years. The story with Charles is that I went to one of his talks in a village hall about 20 years ago, just prior to me retiring, actually. And bearing in mind, I'd had sort of 30 years of conventional double digging. And then when I could afford it, I started to get rotivators and cultivators and all sorts of other ators. And I was very much for that. So I meet this guy in a village hall late on a cold winter's night, and he's trying to tell me that all of that is not needed. So needless to say, I gave Charles a bit of a rough time, to say the least. And he's a very calm, very lovely gentleman. And he just said to me, do you know what? Just try a couple of square meters. Don't do a lot, but do it exactly as I've suggested. And that was in the February. I'll never forget it. It's a cold winter's night. And I went back, and that spring, give it a try. So I did. I put about 5 or 6, well, one of my plots, which is about a bit more than that, 6 square meters. And in the September, October, I made a point of finding his number, and I rang him up and I said, I probably owe you the greatest apology I've ever given anyone else. It works. I don't know why it works, but it works. And I must admit, I've never looked back. I've been growing no dig now right the way through. And as I'm getting older, I'm finding that, yeah, there is an advantage. It's often when I do little chats on it, people will come into the room and say, I remember one case I talked to a group of people at our head office. And this guy walked in and said, this is where the lazy gardeners are. People get the impression that it's lazy gardening because you don't physically dig. But I can assure you, you have to do a lot of other things which can be quite physical, making compost. And I make a lot of compost. I'm fortunate. I got some spare space on my allotment site, and I bring in other people's garden waste, etc. Up until the shutdown, I was visiting 3 or 4 coffee houses every week to pick up their coffee grounds, and I'd done that for several years, ending up in must have been tons of coffee grounds. And that was one of the ingredients in the compost, the way I do compost. I adopted a practice that anything that's had a life can be composted. Absolutely anything, even us. You can compost anything. If you get the mixture right, it will compost quickly. If not, just let it have a cold compost, and eventually it will compost anyhow.
Are you telling us that you've put somebody's body on your compost heap?
Well, I've got to confess here.
Oh dear!
Many years ago, I put in my new asparagus bed, and I remember this is something I remember from father, my father and other people. He said the best thing you can do is put a bit of roadkill in the bottom, right in the bottom, and it was amazing that morning, and we're going back 30 or 40 years, I expect. That morning, I was traveling, and there was a dead badger in the road, and I thought, that's just what I need. So I picked up the dead badger, and that badger has done me good for 30 or 40, because that asparagus
was that the start of your criminal activity?
Absolutely, yeah, Mr. Badger, yeah.
Mr. Badger. Adam Badger.
Yeah, that's right. And that badger obviously decomposed over the years, quite deep down, by the way. way. This is not no dig. This is when I was
What,
digging.
bit like a burial?
It's a burial. Yeah, not quite that deep. Probably about 3 foot down. And you form a bed, you dig the hole, and you put it more or less in the subsoil. And you're forming an extra pit for the roots, you see. And then you just put the soil on top of it, and you form a mound. And then you put the crowns over that soil. Then you backfill it. And then every year you get a wonderful crop. And I'm still getting it to this day. The only thing that I do to that, so that's the bottom nutrition. The only thing, because I'm no dig now, I put a top dressing on every day, every year. And that dressing is seaweed, dead seaweed. Because of course the asparagus originally was an aquatic plant that found its way up onto the dunes. So it likes sandy soil and also likes salt. It relishes salt, actually. An annual dressing of salt, and it'll give you some good asparagus. So yeah, that's the story about the dead body. I didn't mean to go there really, but never mind. So yeah, I make this compost, and all you do, and this is no dig. So you have to get, if you're starting off from scratch, this time of the year is the absolute best time of the year. You would just clear the ground of any bad weeds, not all of them, just knock them off or just dig them up. And this time of the year, when they're dying back, if I was starting from scratch on a weedy patch of ground, I would put a layer of ordinary cardboard on top. Now, today would be a good day because it would get nice and wet. And then on top of that, for the very first year, you put as much compost, compostable material, anything organic, as a layer on top of the cardboard to the depth of about 3 to 4 inches. If you did it today or tomorrow, you'd leave that now until the spring. You'd get very, very little weed coming in. But what you would get worm activity immediately. You'd get mycorrhizames starting to form. And you go back in the spring, plant through it, very few weeds. It will be quite moist because the cardboard would keep it moist and the compost would keep it moist. That compost would probably be enough insulation to see us through any bad frosts. And what would be happening underneath at the cardboard, we're only talking 3 or 4 inches, what would be happening underneath, that the worm activity would have increased dramatically. Unlike normal bare soil or soil which you turn up this time of the year, if you expose that, you let the moisture out, and you do let all the carbons out as well. So hence, all that lovely locked up carbon is now going up to deplete the atmosphere. But not least of all, you're keeping everything in, so is all your micro, the micro life in that soil is going to keep going throughout the winter, especially for us in the West Country. That's good, because when you come along and put your plants in, whether they be cabbages, beans, peas, whatever you put in, immediately those roots will be ready. What will be happening underneath that cardboard layer? You just dig down through, pop your plant in, and the roots immediately will be in contact with all the worms and things. Yes. Is that a hand up?
Yeah. I've seen a programme, actually. I don't know if it was Monty Don that they had an excerpt chap on there, and they went into about microorganisms and said that they're the most important thing in the soil, that if you deplete the soil of those, that's a major mistake. They're actually where they did experiments with it.
Yeah, they were. That's mycorrhizome. That's the little hairy things. They reckon that is.
They tested them in a petri dish. They showed how many there were.
Yeah. And what no dig does is maintains that. All you do to that is you add to it. If you dig it, cultivate it, expose it, you let all that out, and it dies, and it has to rejuvenate back again every year. But with no dig, you just add to it each year, and it becomes more abundant. And it plays a big part, because that needs light. But of course, underneath the ground, there is no light. It needs a sort of type of photosynthesis. But the way it's very crafty, the way it gets its light is it attaches itself to the roots. So it does a symbiotic association with the roots. That then extends the roots. So the roots suddenly, from being about 6 inches long, can be 6 meters long. Yeah. And
yes, it has about in the forest as well, where they they extend the roots of all the fungi and everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Way.
Well, that will happen in your garden with your vegetables. And the net result is that the the cabbage plant or whatever you put in there immediately connects up to this. That is the only means that which the root then can feed. Mm. And in turn, the root supplies the photosynthesis through the leaf to then go back down into the root via normal photosynthesis, and supplies the mycorrhizome with its life support. So it's that association between the two. And the more you keep damaging that, the less effective it is. And the result is that your plant becomes really strong. The productivity of that plant, whatever it be, will be increased. Not dramatically, but it will be increased by an appreciable amount. So it's a win-win-win all the way through, really. You're maintaining the integrity of the land, improving it, locking up the carbon, and this is where the save the planet bit comes. You then, instead of releasing the carbon in the spring, you actually lock it up. And locking that carbon, keep locking it back up, is what we need to do to reverse the global warming. Basically, no dig is as simple as that. It really is worth considering. And if any of you get to see that film, that is a glorified no dig experiment on a massive scale. So much so that if we were to do that with a goodly part of farming, productivity would improve, soil would improve, and global warming would reverse immediately.
Wow.
Sorry, can I just ask you, because I tried it this year and it's been very successful, but I had a slight problem with potatoes. I didn't quite understand how I could sort of harvest them, and actually I dug them in. I just made a hole and dug them in, but harvesting, obviously you have to kind of dig them out.
Well, shake them out, yeah. You'll find that your soil will you were doing potatoes fairly early on in this year or last year. Yeah. I gotta, to be honest with you, I got to admit that potatoes, of all the varieties of things we grow, is probably the most difficult because of the fact that the way they grow. But they will actually grow. On the first year, they will grow just underneath that cardboard. You can just tuck them under the cardboard in that first year. And they will, as you know, you can grow potatoes underneath black polythene if you want. You get a really good crop, providing you can keep the light out from them. So you mulch them when they're going green, coming on the top. They will grow on the surface. Actually, they don't need to be too far down.
Right.
But I agree with you. That's something that comes later. You'll find that later you can just tuck them underneath. The soil will be so loose and organic that's good enough. You can. I always plant my potatoes with my hand, and I just shake them out and then just spuddle around. And I'm all the time I'm patting it down just to try and keep it. But yeah, you will disturb it. It's not about total not digging something up. I mean, you'll find that your root crops like your carrots and parsnips will go like down to Australia, and they're a nightmare to get out. In fact, I can see when I get my parsnips out, I can actually see where the next year I can see where I've been, because I get a small bloom of weeds coming up from the ones that have been locked in down below. So yeah, that's something that will come later. So I think you've done well to get some crops out of there on the first year. But keep it up, and you will. It just gets better each year, Yeah, good.
Alan, I'm with you most of the way, but I have one problem.
Yeah.
We have mare's tails in
Oh.
development, and right. How do you deal with those without digging?
Oh, it's a nightmare, absolute nightmare.
I'm glad you said
The nightmare, yeah. No, there is no real answer, is there? It really is difficult. You just got to keep the light away from it. Just try and keep it cut off as much as you can.
I've tried everything, and they just.
I know.
I realize now that the important thing that I have to do each year is this time of year I've got to get out every trace of root as deep as I can.
Yeah, if you can. Yeah, that's where it conflicts with no dig. But I still maintain, even with whatever method you're using for cultivation with mare's tail, you're on a hiding to nothing, really. It's just terrible. It really is terrible. All I would say, if you can afford to, for a while, just suppress that light, because all plants, even mare's tail, need light. You wouldn't think so, because they seem to come up everywhere, but you will suppress them by blocking the light out if you can. Yeah. But it's a long-term thing. It really is. And even people that spray struggle with it because of the structure of it. You know, it's not easy to get rid of.
You can't kill it.
No. I think I'm going to have to say I haven't got a real answer for that one. Just apart from the fact that I've always kept my fingers crossed. As far as I know, on our site, we don't have any. Having said that, some idiot will probably bring it in now. Because once you've got it, it does take a hold.
In every allotment.
Yeah. Well, we got 200 plots, and I know most of those plots. I've seen a lot of mare's tail. I saw it yesterday on a site. I was helping out on a site yesterday, giving some advice, and it was in one corner. And I said, if it was me, I wouldn't be using that. I'd be covering it with something, suppressing it, keeping the light away from it for as long as you can, just to weaken it, really. But it is a nightmare. It really is. Something we have to live with on some sites.
We've heard your advice about roadkill for asparagus. Is there any other recommendations for other crops?
So what did you have in mind? Because I probably do things differently with a lot of things, but yeah. Any problem areas?
No, we do seem to have we don't seem to get many hedgehogs nowadays around, no. but pheasants and bunnies appear on the road.
Well,
so.
we'll always get that, won't we? But the pheasants and the bunnies often go for unusual things too, don't they? I remember I learned that lesson I always assumed that a rabbit would go for instance, carrot. No, I soon discovered that it was in November, December. I still had a row of carrots that I was using for winter pulling. And I also had some spring onions. They cleared the spring onions, didn't touch the carrots. So what's that about? But I mean, badgers are notorious for having sweet corn, as you know. How they know that it's right that day when they decide to come and have it, I don't know. But they do, they will have it. Back to advice on growing. Let's start with seeds. This is my advice for growing. I suppose of all the varieties that I get questioned about, it would be parsnips, germinating parsnips. That, for some people, causes quite a problem. And there's been all sorts of so-called solutions. But there's one thing that I have discovered. I tend to do, I put my parsnips in on or about 24th, 25th of February. And if I was doing it on a dry day, I would put a conventional drill in. I would just scrape out the drill, and then I would go and I would get some fresh, clean tap water. Not take it out the butt or take it from any other source. I would get the freshest. In fact, so much so that I often take that with me to the allotment because we don't have water that time of the year. And I would take it fresh from the tap, and I would gently just put it in that drill, nowhere else. If it was a dry day, I'd just put it in that drill, and I'd go away and I'd have a cup of tea, let it soak in, and then I would place the seed in the bottom of the drill, cover it up with the dry soil, and then I would walk across that drill, so I push it down and indent it. And if it's in February, I put a piece of glass or a piece of perspex over it and just wait. and that they will germinate as short as 10 to 15 days. They will come up that way. Never have a problem with that at all. Take the glass off and you've got yourself a crop of parsnips. But never, ever, fresh seeds, never use butt water with them. After they've germinated, fine, no problem at all. But always use tap water in the drill, not on them, not on top of them like Monty Don, spread all the seeds everywhere. In the drill, lock them in, shut them up for the night. That's it. Never water them again. Never water from the top, always from the bottom. That's all I can say about that. Any other questions?
Alan, do you feel you've reached the end of your presentation?
Yeah. Well, that'll be okay, won't it?
Well, I was just making sure I wasn't going to override anything else.
No. I think the time's about right, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I have a couple of questions for you from the point of view of us as users of the Parish Online software.
Yeah.
Which is, have you found in your time, your association with allotments, that there is specific data that we need to keep to make a smooth running organization? Obviously the start and end dates of tenancies, but anything else that you need to know? People's data, when they got buried and where they got buried, that sort of thing? In case you need a body,
You mean the badgers?
Well, funny enough, a couple of years ago, my father died, and the question arose of what did we want to do with him? And so I looked into the legal side of things, and it turns out you can bury a human being anywhere, and it doesn't have to be 6 feet down, it only has to be 2 feet down. And
Right.
The recommendation was that if I felt strongly enough that I wanted to put him in my garden, I could, but they strongly recommended that before I do it, I let the police know, so that the next door neighbor didn't get very worried.
Yeah.
But I was astonished to discover that there's no law whatsoever about you.
Wow, that's an interesting fact, isn't it? Yeah.
Or in your allotment, if you like.
Yeah, I'm beginning to wish I hadn't mentioned about
That'd be terrible if you bought a house and you were digging and there was a coffin there, wouldn't it? That would be horrific.
Well, I won't tell you what I did with my father then.
No, don't.
So going back to the question, Alan, is there anything specific that you would recommend that we need to be gathering in the way of data and storing it?
In specifically for allotments?
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's what the topic is today.
Yeah. Well, not really. And unfortunately, nowadays, it's not really allotments. If it's the old thing about records, isn't it? And accidents and things like that. Those are the ones that you often have to keep records of in law. So I suppose the honest answer to that doesn't seem allotment related at all. But if it was a workplace, then you would be required to keep, an accident record or of an employee. Whether you could sort of say that would be applied to your tenants. You had a duty of care. If you had somebody, for instance, on that plot, which illegally burnt plastic, for instance, on their plot, and somebody inhaled that, it could be a long-term risk, I suppose. Asbestos is the obvious one. But unfortunately, it's not allotment, doesn't seem allotment related, but it could be. And that's why it's important to do, anyone that's responsible for allotments should be doing risk assessments. They should do an initial one and then a follow-up as and when something changed, and a regular review, and that should be recorded and be readily available to all the members. So you should be doing a risk assessment.
Michelle South, any input there, please?
Music to my ears, Alan. Absolutely, as an insurance broker, that's music to my ears. Yeah, I mean, we encourage the use of Parish Online now to actually upload records of that very thing. So if you've got your risk assessments, it's a cloud-based system that multiple people can have access to. It's a great place to store your risk assessments or any incident logs, anything like that. and they can be associated and pinned directly to the allotments. So absolutely, I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else got any points they'd like to raise, please?
I have, sorry, I seem to be, I've had a bit of problem actually logging in. My parish clerk is able to log in. I'm on a Mac. Is there any reason why I shouldn't be able to log in? Do you know?
If you happen to hang on, Anita, when when everyone else leaves, I'll go over it with you.
Great, thank you.
In case that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Are we all done then? Thank you so much, Alan, for what was a fascinating and wide-ranging discussion. I really enjoyed that. Thank you very much for your time and trouble.
Really interesting. Really, really interesting.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
Very good.
Thank you.
So for those of you who are aware, there is a recording of this meeting. I'll stick it up with a timeline on the website so that you can know where to go to find out about putting in the roadkill, putting in the seeds, putting in the parsnips, burying them upside down, whatever it is that you have to do. That'll all be on there. So I'll get that up hopefully later this evening. And thank you all very much for joining us. And please feel free to leave unless you're called Anita, in which case I'll chat with you afterwards.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Graham.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Nice to see
Bye.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Come on, good.
Graham, I'm still here. Can I actually also hear a little bit about logging in?
Of course. No, you may well be able to resolve
That's my problem as well.
Right. So Anita, you trying to log in with an account that you know already exists?
Yep. And the parish clerk put in the account details and passed over the password. And they managed to get in. But then we tried it last night, actually. He managed to get in. And then a bit later on, he logged out and then tried again and couldn't get in.
He couldn't get in.
Then he tried again and managed to get in. So it seems to be, I can't get in at all.
Bear with me a second whilst I just check with Andrew what his issue is. Is that similar to yours, Andrew?
I think they changed the system for logging in a few weeks ago. And I found suddenly that I was logged out, I was locked out and I couldn't get in. And I'd always been using the administrator's login code. And I think that was no longer applicable. But they reset my password for me. They reset my login name and password for me.
Right.
But I have a feeling this may be the same thing if it's happened in the last few months. That it was a result of something they did at their end.
Anita, are you using the original admin password, do you know, or is this a different one?
I'm not really sure. I believe I'm using the original username. The password I know has been changed and has been well, as I said, it was working for the parish clerk, and then he couldn't get in. So and then a bit later on he could. So there's this funny thing going on. But I just he sent me the link, which I just copied and pasted and put in, and I've never been able to get it to work at all.
That doesn't work anymore. I think you have to have your own login username and password. What I would suggest is get in touch with them and ask them just to sort it out for you.
Right.
Tell them what the problem is.
Do you know whom to talk to, Anita?
No, I don't know.
Okay, so if you,
so
I think it's just support, isn't it? Bear with me a second. Let me look it up.
thank you.
It's just support, and I always get it's always what is his name? Muse comes back to me.
Chris, right. So Anita, if you just send an email to support@geosphere.com, I think it's geosphere.com, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bear with me a second, I'll just check it. Yes, so that's support@geosphere, which is GEOXPHERE.com, and they will come back to you very quickly.
Okay, sorry, can I go over that? GEOXPHERE.
That's a P for Papa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
PHE, yes, exactly. Geosphere.com.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Maybe I'm looking now at what my username is that they changed it to, and it's Andrew @ and then there is the code for that they've always used for Martok.
Yes, we each have our individual codes.
Oh,
And
okay.
now I didn't have that because I've been doing this for several years now, and I was on an old system. When they updated the system, I suddenly found that my username didn't work anymore.
Wow.
So maybe if you ask them about that, they'll just create a username for you, and maybe give you a password, or you apply for the password using.
Okay.
Just out of interest, Anita, I've given you the ability to share your screen. If you can share your screen and log in, we'll just see what it says on your screen.
How do I do that?
So go down to the bottom and with your mouse, and the green icon called share screen should pop up. Now I haven't used Zoom on a Mac yet. Is that where it comes, Andrew? On the bottom of the screen?
Back up and sync from Google. Where is this? Where is this?
I don't know. I've never. Oh, share screen. It's middle at the bottom.
Yes, the middle of the bottom. So just put your mouse down to the bottom line of your the videos.
Oh, this. Right. I'm on. Yeah. Okay. Got you.
So go on to share screen, and then you choose your browser and click on the share screen button again. So you have a sort of a series of pages to look at, and one of them will be your browser.
Right.
Can you see that?
Yeah. Is that right? It says I'm on the Firefox.
Okay, so now just click on share screen down the bottom right.
Yeah.
And we should see what you're looking at.
Well, I haven't actually done it at the moment, so.
Okay, well, you got Firefox open, so just create a new entry for Firefox. Do a Control-T, for instance.
Oh gosh, I can't do that because I've got a funny.
Something in the way.
I've got a funny keyboard here. Sorry. So shall I just go into?
Just go into Firefox, open a new window.
Right. Open a new window, which is here. Yeah.
Right, now, if you now go back to the share screen for Zoom and click on the green share screen button. There you go. Well done. Whoops, yes.
Oh wow.
So we're now seeing your screen. So if you go into Parish Online as if you were going to log in.
So that will be up here, won't it?
Well, who knows where you've got it. Yes.
Yeah, right. There we go. Parish Online. There we are. Put that on there. I'll come down here. Put it there. And then go up to in.
Okay, that's a very long way around. Never mind.
Okay, well, that's the way I do it.
Okay, so that looks like a very usable one. Now, Andrew, you saying they don't permit admin any longer?
I think they do, but maybe they've got it. They fix these to a particular computer, and it may be that it's not recognizing your computer. I think that's what's happening.
Oh, okay.
And what you ought to have, if you're not the administrator, are you the main administrator?
No.
No, you ought to have
your own user.
Anita at 40UE025 and then a password.
Okay.
And that has to be, you have to have administrator privileges. So they will set that up. If you ask them for administrator privileges with your name, Anita at, then they should set it up for you, I think.
Thank you.
Do you think your administrator knows how to create a user account for you?
Yes, if the administrator knows, that would help.
Not sure.
Well, let me show you what to do, and then you'll be able to tell them what to do.
Okay.
So I'm going to share you my screen.
Right.
So if you can stop sharing yours, which means going up to the top.
Stop share.
Just stop sharing. Yes, that's right.
Right. Okay. There we go.
Now I'll share mine.
Right.
And that's there. Share. Control T.
Okay.
So I'm just going to there. Parish Online login.
Right. Okay. I see what you're doing. Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing it very quickly. Plagued by a very contrary internet connection here at times.
Oh, yeah. I think we all suffer from that, don't we?
Yeah. I also had the issue that Zoom told me that I had no more room for storing video recordings, so I had to download them all, and now my system is busy backing them all up to the internet.
Oh, right.
So if I log in,
Okay.
it's my login.
Yeah.
Golly, it's just taking forever, isn't it? Sorry about that.
What? Can't really do anything other than, can you? If that's the way it is.
Well, I keep telling everybody I need a much faster computer, but they sort of look at me and shrug.
My husband's just done that to me. He's just bought himself a new one.
Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll turn off the video on my link so that. There we go. See if that speeds things up a bit. Right. So if I go up, you can still hear me talking, yes?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So if I go up to admin.
Where's admin?
So if you go sorry, let's go back a bit. A second. Bear with me.
Okay.
So
when you
up in the top right hand corner, there's a little cog wheel, and when you click on that, you get a list of options. Let me just show you. Let's go back to maps. Of course, everything is so. There we go.
Oh, right. Okay.
So bear in mind, we are traveling at the speed of Microsoft here. I think I've ever seen it this bad. You're in Milverton, Anita?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Well, clearly Milverton has a bad influence on the internet.
Yeah, sadly.
There we go. So up in the top right-hand corner, there's this cogwheel.
Yep.
Click on that and you get this down pop-up list. Click on administration. And over on the left-hand side, you'll notice that there's the option for users. See it here?
Yep.
Click on users.
Yep.
And then what you're going to want to have them do is to click on the plus sign to add a new user. All right?
Yep.
Bear with me a second. Let me just hit that.
Yep.
Good afternoon. It's Graham. She is, Jill. Just 1 second. Bear with me. Bear with me, guys. I'll be right back.
Okay. This has been quite.
What's happening here, Anita? That the each user has a different name, something at that that code number for your village.
Okay.
And you need one of those.
Right.
And that's what caused the problem for us, because I didn't have that. when the whole thing was taken over by the new parish clerk. And I found myself no longer able to use the login name of the main administrator because I was using a different computer.
I see. Okay.
And they sorted it out by just setting it up for me. But
Right.
you may be able to, whoever is your main administrator may be able to set that up for you using this, using what Graham is now showing us.
Okay.
So I'm just showing what they would need to do, Anita.
Right. So,
your department can be, you don't need to bother with that. Your email address you put in, or just put mine in for the moment. The type is the important one. You want to have them make you the admin, all right?
Yep.
And then they just click on the create user button.
Okay.
You get an email from the system which says, please create your own password.
Right.
And then you'll be able to log on from there on as yourself. And with a bit of luck, that'll resolve the issue. And if it doesn't, I suggest you give them send them an email to that support@geosphere.com address.
I will do. Thank you very much. That's really helpful because it's very frustrating not being able to access this.
Yes, very much. Nothing worse than having a system you can't use.
Well, that's right. That's right.
Okay, so we're done there.
Yep.
Don't mean that, I mean that one. So do we have any other queries?
That's all as far as I'm concerned. Thank you so much. It's really been very interesting. Yeah, I've enjoyed it so much. And there's a training day or something on Friday, is that right?
Yes, I want to ask you
about. Yes. You're very welcome to come to that. Yes, Andrew, we are having one.
Yeah, I may not be there. I've got a stepdaughter who's probably coming here Friday afternoon, and I may have to go to the station, but hopefully I'll be there.
Okay, well, you can always join late, or I suppose once you've got her, you want to talk to her.
She wants to talk to me.
Oh, right. Yes. Well, good luck with the visit.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much.
You're very welcome. See you next time.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Right.